Hello and welcome to Only Stupid Answers. My name is Sam Bashor.
And I'm DJ Wooldridge.
And we're wearing the same clothes we do week in, week out. It's just the truth.
Clothes are an
illusion. How long
illusion.
have I worn this headband? Who knows? I need a haircut so bad, but I'm not going to risk my health or others to go get it. I'm not better than anyone. I'm just doing my civic duty. Any hoozles, wear a mask. Let's talk about
Sam, this is not a political podcast.
This is not a political podcast, all right? Wear your goddamn masks or I'm going to come slap you or something. But let's talk about Doom Patrol Season 2. We did a spoiler-free review of the first 3 episodes, thankful to DC and Warner Brothers for sending over those episodes for us. That was very nice. But now we're going to be doing spoilers. So make sure you go watch those episodes, then come back. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
That's that guy. But yeah, let's talk about. We're gonna take it. These will be a little bit more condensed normally than compared to our other breakdowns because this is three episodes. We want to make sure this episode's not too long. Our review breakdown. But yeah, let's go ahead and start it off with Fun Size Patrol. That's episode 1 of season 2. Quickie synopsis. That's not so quickie. In the season premiere, Niles, Jane, Cliff, Rita, Vic, and Dorothy are still trapped in a miniature size weeks after the events of last season. Camped out in Cliff's miniature racetrack set, Dorothy tries to befriend both Cliff and Jane, while Larry does his best to figure out a way to restore everyone to their normal size once again. Meanwhile, Rita asks Vic to help in using her elastic abilities for good, while Jane hides out in the underground and Niles tries everything to earn forgiveness for his past deeds.
Good luck with that.
In the end, though, Niles will have to sacrifice something very precious while making a bargain with Willoughby Kipling in order to help the team and keep his daughter safe and the world safe from her imaginary friends. Now, I know you're checking out the Doom Patrol Grant Morrison run that this series is based on. How is Dorothy Spinner lining up with the portrayal in this show compared to her? Because she was an original character created during that series.
Yeah, well, no, she was not actually. She was actually a refuge from the run just before it. It was when Grant Morrison took on, he made a deal with the previous writer who kind of wrapped up his run. And I think a majority of the characters in that were either offed or knocked out. And one of the few that Grant Morrison kept was Dorothy Spinner. And it's pretty similar in that Dorothy Spinner is an ape-faced girl, and her imagination is incredibly powerful. And what I mean by that is not that like, oh, she's got a great, like literally it creates things. Specifically, like I don't know how to describe her, that mirror-faced woman. That is from the comic as well. The spider is unique to this, and obviously the Candlemaker is from the comic book run as well. And I'm excited to dive more into him once the show talks more about the character. I'm excited to see where they take that because it could be really interesting. But I gotta say,
I think we should focus on it in this episode just because it did pop up in
like the specific
episode.
Of what it represents. We're gonna wait till see what the show says about that. But I gotta say right off the bat, I think Abigail Shapiro, who plays Dorothy Spinner, God bless her. Not only is she great, does she do a great job of immediately making you care about the character, but she has to do it through all those prosthetics. We mentioned it in ours.
And the teeth.
And the teeth and everything. And she does better with that than a majority of adult actors. And I just have to hope that she's not in that makeup chair for too long. Legally she can't be. But I think she does a really great job. And I love Mark Sheppard as Willoughby Kipling. He was part of my favorite 2-part in the last season, so I was glad. It's one of those moments where it feels like the creator's on the same page with the viewers. Like, oh yeah, we love this guy too. He's gonna pop back up. Like here he is.
I personally loved how he was summoned. It was like putting some blood on a ukulele or a mandolin, and it started playing itself. And he was like dancing with a umbrella.
Yep.
You know what I'll say about these first 3 episodes? It's Timothy Dalton is not just a supporting, a special guest appearance. He is very much a main character in this. He's just making an extra coin by getting that title on the credits of this show. But he is very good. And man, I forgot where we left off with everybody. They'd been miniaturized. Danny the Street was now Danny the Brick.
Yes.
And everyone's got to start over again. And in the end of this first episode, we can just say like they get resized, they're bigger now, but and Cyborg leaves. But I do like that Rita, I felt like one of the knocks to the first season was it didn't feel like Rita had enough time to grow as much as the other characters or come to terms with her past. Because I didn't even I forgot that she would been around there basically as long as Chief has been.
Yeah,
there.
she is the longest.
She's the longest, and in both ways, you know.
Yeah,
elastic. Good joke. Good observation. But I'm glad that we're kind of diving into her wanting to be a hero or wanting to just use her abilities in ways that she feels she has control over. It's not like she's not waiting for like another meltdown where she will just turn into a puddle. Like she wants to have control over these abilities. I really like that idea, especially in this first episode, trying to practice just like stretching her arm, just throwing her arm. It's like gross Mr. Fantastic. And I'm on board with it. It's a cool way to explore this ability. And also in this episode, we get Cliff trying to deal with his circumstances with him like killing the rats.
Yeah.
Morbid. It's that whole rat scene where the mama rat eats the weak.
My God.
That made me gasp.
That was my favorite scene in the episode. It might be my favorite scene in these first 3 episodes, just because it's a good example of like where this show lives. It's not above sweetness because we see the mother rat with the other baby rats. But it's a little it's right off the bat, it's a little gross because of the baby rats. And then she eats it and it's like, it's a dangerous world that these characters inhabit. It's a dangerous, weird, sometimes heartfelt world.
It's tough. Yeah. It's tough to be the Doom Patrol, especially now, like knowing what Niles did to them.
Yeah.
Or hid from them.
Yeah.
And also, I like that they finally explain, like right in season 2, it's like, what does everyone want to know? Why are they alive? I know that you brought up the fact that like each of them are immortal for different reasons, but let's figure out what that is. Also, how is Niles immortal? And I think we maybe even threw out there, like, was it because he was with the cave woman? Like, is that why he stayed alive? Like, it was hard to tell.
You asked me, by the way, how Dorothy Spinner lines up in the comic. In the comic, she's not related to the Chief at all. But I think this is one of those. I think the show does a really good job of adapting that material for the framework of a serialized show. And so I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a really smart, elegant way of tying in, because I think in the comics, more recently, the Doom Patrol was that way just because the Chief likes to mess around. I think saying he was trying to find immortality, so he was messing with these people, and he was trying to find immortality because his daughter's functionally immortal. And so he's trying to stay around to raise her. It does become a little bit dubious when he's like, I want to plant you on Danny the Street and run away, but it's to figure out how to be with you. It's like, I don't know if that completely tracks. But
it doesn't make him any better.
Yeah.
It just gives him a reason for why he has done horrible things.
But I think it ties everything together well.
Agreed. And it's barely like a good reason. Like it's barely a good, like, and because also at the end of the first episode, when all the imaginary friends are coming out, where it's like, ooh, I see a little bit of that HBO Max money. Like that little extra, the imaginary friends look really good. Not that the visual effects in the first season look bad. It was just like, this looks really good. Yeah. When he threatens to lock her away again, that's like, so like, yeah, he did choose to like put her somewhere safe. So, and then he's trying to learn how to be immortal to be with her and protect her and protect people from her. But you did lock her away.
Yeah. And I think, maybe that hints to another aspect of him being kind of dishonest, that he's not telling us the full picture, because we have yet to really unpack Dorothy's abilities and what all they represent.
Agreed. In the first episode, we see saber-toothed tiger, two-legged deer creature.
We saw in the previous season with the cave woman
as like a protector or a deity or something. But like now it seems like Dorothy kind of controls or summons it. Yeah. And it's scary. It's a scary thing too. All of this is the intro with her and the candle coming out of her hand. I was weirdly like, I thought that would be like a normal effect that wouldn't bother me, but it made me feel gross seeing that come out of her hand when she made the wish. The ideas on the show are so interesting, but I like in this first episode, we see Vic looking at the painting, always checking it because he is the superhero, is trying to make sure Mr. Nobody and Ezekiel stay in the painting. But for some reason, part of his technology doesn't see it there, meaning maybe he's still being affected by Mr. Nobody. Because if I remember correctly, it was his human side that was being affected by Mr. Nobody, not his robot side, right? Yeah, he's being manipulated.
And if I recall correctly, not all of it was manipulation by Mr. Nobody. Some of it was his own issues. And so that might be some of what we're seeing here and what he's trying to impact. I will say, I feel like for me, sending Cyborg away kind of it does not work as well, because I like it when, this actually kind of tends to happen a lot with, like, it happened in Guardians 2. Guardians 2 is another good example. It's like, cool, we have a good ensemble. Now what happens if we split them apart? And it's like, well, it's not as cool then, because the part of the entertaining thing is seeing these characters bounce off of each other. So if you split them all off, it takes away some of the dynamics. So I hope Cyborg comes back in the fold sooner rather than later.
Agreed. I do like. We'll get into that, because his, like, what he's doing elsewhere is in future episodes.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a second, because I do like it. I do like what they're exploring with those stories. But yeah, in this first episode, we find out why the chief is how he is been able to elongate his life, and now he has given that up to Willoughby, which is. Willoughby, you're kind of being a dick. I'll be honest. Like, if you're asking him to give that up, but maybe, I mean, Willoughby knew what Niles had done to these people, and he didn't say anything. So maybe we shouldn't like him.
Yeah. Willoughby is very out for himself, and also it was not a deal with Willoughby. It was Willoughby dealing with another contact. So who knows? I can't imagine that they see that, and then we don't find out who this person is that's able to unshrink them that Willoughby's talking to at some point. Like, at some point, those chickens got to come home to roost.
And I will say, speaking of chickens and speaking of food, I did like the mini pancakes that Larry was making for everybody. It was sweet.
Agreed.
He was trying to take care of them to the best of his ability. And in this first episode, we see the negative spirit showing him a relationship, interaction he had with his son, which we still hadn't gotten to dealing with his kids.
Yeah.
Which I was like, we gotta, and it's gonna be awful.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be, Larry, you suck. Like, we gotta admit this. Like, and your life was horrible, but like, we gotta go talk to your kids. So, and in this first episode, we get a flash forward, or maybe like a memory somewhere else to his son older now.
Yeah, I think it's the negative spirit takes him mentally to see his son right before he passes.
And that's awful.
Yeah.
And it's like, but also I like the negative spirit as what it's capable of. And I like that he's been able to stay awake more now that they were like working more in harmony. It's what they're able to do with all these characters is really cool. And also Jane's got a lot to work on. Jane, I got to try to mention all the characters. Jane's really repressing what she's going through right now and what's happening in the underground. So I think that wraps it up pretty well with the first episode. But I did like also that Cliff was using the little track cars to race around. What was it called?
Racetrack. Like, whatever, doesn't matter.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's got a name specifically,
RC
but I can't
cars
think of what
or
it
whatever.
is. But what would you give this first episode?
I'd give it. I'm probably going to give all these episodes around the same rating. Probably around an 8. As we'll see when we talk to other episodes, I can kind of see why they dropped these 3 episodes at once, because we don't move a lot. Like, what's Larry dealing with in episode 1? His kids. What's Larry dealing with in episode 2? His kids. What's Larry dealing with in episode 3? His kid. It's kind of the same thing. So as much as I like the show and I like these characters and I really love season 1, there's a lot of throat clearing in season 2 about like getting ready and setting things up. So I give it an 8.
I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Like, I think these personally, I really enjoyed all these episodes a lot. Like, a lot. And I'm happy to be back with this show. And it's a bummer that Harley Quinn is ending when this is starting. It would be really cool if these shows were on at the same time, just because the world would feel a little bit better. But with that said, let's go to episode 2, Tyme Patrol, TYME. Cliff, Jane, and Rita pursue Dr. Tyme, and in his time-altering space mineral, in their reluctant quest to help Niles and Dorothy. At the support group, Vic runs into Ronnie, a feisty military vet who challenges his beliefs, and Larry comes face to face with his past at the funeral. Now, I think the shortest story that happens here is Larry's. Overall, so he goes to the funeral of his son who committed suicide, if I'm understanding correctly. And that's awful. He was an older man, but he also meets his other son, who's in his 80s, and it was an interesting thing because like we've seen stories where like a parent or a child like ran away and they kind of like prodigal son type stuff in other mediums. But I never thought about the idea of like someone at the age of like 12 not seeing their father for like 80 years and then him coming back, or however long it was. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, but at least 60 years. And all of a sudden he comes back and he sounds the same. He kind of hasn't aged.
Well, I mean,
really.
You can't tell. He's wrapped up in those bandages.
And he's got a lot of burns, like radiation burns. So I don't know if aging counts, but like he's basically unchanged in a way. I don't even know, because all he does is invites him to the party. Yeah. Your wake is more appropriate. And I like that interaction a lot, because it's like, how else would you deal with it?
Yeah.
You just kind of have to accept that's him, and now you move on. Like and seeing like Larry having to deal with this in the negative spirit, trying to get him to face these things. I really like that as a story beat. It's basically why I cried a lot in season 1, is whenever Larry had to like confront different parts of his personality and things that he had hidden away from himself and not accepted with himself. So yeah, I really like that storyline, and it ends with the butterflies. Like that's the end, and we see butterflies being hinted to throughout this episode, which I did like as a nice hint to the follow-up. But not getting into that right now. We can talk about let's talk about Cyborg, because you mentioned you weren't a fan of him being separated.
Yeah,
I did. I at first I was on the same feeling with you, because I was bummed in Guardians 2. I do like Guardians 2, but I do get the criticism. So I did like this story of him going to a support group, and it feels very normal compared to everything else. And I like that juxtaposition, that they're like, yeah, this world's normal outside of the Doom Patrol. The Doom Patrol somehow just like gather up all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
And I like that idea. And Ronnie, I think, is a really cool character, and seeing them interact with each other, and Vic trying to have a relationship and exploring that, because in the comics, I feel like he's just kind of been paired up with like other characters, or they've never really explored like his sexuality, really. You know, like,
does he have robot bits down there?
Yeah, no, like, but also, like, did your dad make you some? Like, what is
how
that?
Does that
like,
work?
what
And we
happens?
also, I don't know if we know how much of a robot. I feel like this version of Cyborg is not the most robot Cyborg we've seen. He's not like Justice League, where it's literally just like
he's got nothing left.
He's got nothing left. And Ronnie is played by Kieran Oblom. And for deep bench DC fans, they might remember Ron Evers, who was like he was like an evil cyborg, basically. He was a friend of Cyborg in the comics, who becomes like an evil cyborg. I believe he shows up in Teen Titans. And of course, this is a new version of the character, because it's Ronnie and it's a lady now. And there's some tension there that I would be surprised if existed in the comics of those times between Vic and Ron. So it's interesting to see them try and like synthesize, because like you were saying, Cyborg doesn't have like the deepest bench of supporting characters outside of the Titans.
They tried to make some more with his solo series, and before Rebirth, because they did a Cyborg Rebirth, they had this like really interesting idea of not exploring like, is he man or is he machine, or is he a machine that thinks he's a man, or like the Swamp Thing question. You know, they were just like, no, we're just seeing a young man outside of the Justice League trying to rebuild his life like he rebuilt himself. And I really like that idea for a story. And there's a really sweet moment in that comic where, since it's like Mother Box, it's like alien tech, like he can shapeshift like way more than he can now. He can't just like make a gun or make a sonic cannon. In that comic, he learns secretly in a second that he can make himself look like a human, like with his technology, not like a mirage or anything. Like he can look like a human, but he does it for a second, and you just like see like his calf reappear, and you realize that he's like rebuilt his body. And as soon as someone comes in to check on him, he turns back into Cyborg, because it's not that he's accepted Cyborg. It's just that he knows that this is what he really looks like. You know, like it's that. But that moment for a second that he could have that, I thought was really sweet. And maybe we get to explore that in this, but also in this episode, we see like they don't like that his eye is constantly recording, and that to turn that off, I get why people would be scared of that. And just looking at other vets, they have been through similar things. He attacked his dad, and his whole body got disintegrated, and his mom died, and it's his fault, and like, you know, like all this stuff. Like there's a lot he needs to work through, and the Doom Patrol is not allowing him to do that. Like I know there's the tapes with Niles, but that's not really working. So I'm glad he's taken the time, and I like that he's having another relationship outside of Doom Patrol, because like this is a character that Jeff Johns and the other heads of DC thought deserved to like be on like the Justice League, you know? And I agree. I think that's a cool, like to have a tech-based hero and have a Teen Titan graduate up to that level. Like that's really cool. And so building up that supporting cast on a show like this outside of the Doom Patrol is well worth it, because everybody else is dealing with their family. And if Cyborg's dad's been in more comics than Cyborg, it feels like. So let's have some more characters for Cyborg. But I'm now reiterating, but I'm now going back and forth. But let's talk about Dr. Time, because I read him
Dr. Time
in 52, not New 52, but 52, because there's an island of evil mad scientists. They all lived there, and they all just did different experiments for this evil corporation or something. And it was just great. Like, I really liked it. And he has this big clock head, and I was like, it's ridiculous, but I love it. But I was like, as soon as they said Dr. Time, I'm like, is that who I'm thinking of? Like, because if it is, then they're gonna have to do the helmet. Like, there's no like way around it. Like, we had like a horse with a nail in its head pop out of the ether and sing music to give them a hint about something. Like, so as soon as we saw him, and I like this idea that he knows the perfect time. It was 1978 at this roller rink, like in Florida. Like, it was perfect. Everything about it. So anyone that comes after him, I like the idea that like a caveman had come after him, like dictators from the 1800s have come after him. Like, all these people have come after him, but like they're all just stuck here dancing the roller disco forever.
So for me, this felt like I felt like they could have done a whole episode about this, and it felt like it was relegated to like a C story. But yeah, Rita seems to be the only one particularly broken up about the idea of the chief dying, which, as we talked about in the previous episode, she's been around the longest, and even though she has mixed feelings, like, this is her life and she cares about this person, and so she's the one that pushes and gets them to confront Dr. Time. And my favorite bit in it, though, is they all assume it's a helmet, and so she knocks him over and his brain spills out, and they all freak out. And she rewinds the clock face on his head, and that rewinds everything. That whole bit was really good.
And also, I like the hints that we got for Jane and Cliff. Cliff saw the Niles like being way older now and ripping parts of his body off and killing him. And I'm trying to remember what Jane saw. Do you remember what Jane saw?
I do not. I did not remember what you said about Niles. I was like, because I thought we flashed different things from different that we'd previously seen.
No, that was a new thing because he was older.
Nice.
And that was a hint. That's why he's kind of even more afraid to like. Or that's why Cliff is more distrusting of him, because I know he interviews Niles and he talks about, like, he says, "I will do literally anything for my daughter," and you're like, wow, this fucking guy, this guy. We try not to curse, but just like, how can you not with what Niles has done to these people? I just like the idea of Dr. Time, and I thought the guy who has to act through a gigantic clock head did a good job, and I hope he comes back, because they did a good job bringing back characters or having bigger stories for characters in season 1. So hopefully Dr. Time comes back, because he's a weird guy. You should bring him back more.
And he's the perfect version. It reminds me a little bit about Animal Patrol Mineral Man from season 1.
He better come back.
He better come back. Did he
He's
make
in prison?
it?
Maybe
he's in prison.
I think so. Yeah, he didn't come back later, but I hope he comes back in this season. But he did make it, as far as I remember. But again, gang, you let us know in the comments if you remember better than us. But yeah, no, Niles is trying his best, and also during this, Dorothy is kind of just like trying to get to know everyone. And what do you think about all the characters being so annoyed of her?
I mean, I get it in that they, she's kind of the source of all their heartache in a way, but she's also adorable. I wouldn't be mean to her.
But also it's weird because she's like a 119-year-old, 12-year-old.
Yeah,
and
that's something that interests me. I don't know if we'll be able to unpack in the show, but like, I get that she's in the body of a child, but if you've lived that long, you should know some things.
But she's also locked up in so I don't know if she's actually like learning anything when she was there. But man, I hope we get Danny back to his full size. We didn't mention this before, but when we see like the Victorian alleyway where he was living and he used steam to talk to them, that was cool. That's when like he dropped Dorothy off the first time.
Yeah, and also just as a side note, Dr. Time is played by BRENDAN FRASER, I believe is how you pronounce the last name.
And he did a great job. I know you can't get a lot of love with that gigantic head on, but it was such a good reveal that it's his head.
Yes.
Like why would it be his head? And his head is just filled with his brain is filled with those crystals.
Yes.
they're trying to get, but never touch his brain. You got to remember, or you can't touch the crystals directly. They do.
Yeah.
Then that's when they start seeing the futures, which is bad news bears for everybody. But this episode, I think that we hit all the big moments that happened in this episode. I'd give this a 9 out of 10 as well, just for the weirdness of Dr. Tyme. I really like the idea of him, and I like that they brought him to life the way he's supposed to be brought to life. I don't even know how you pitch that to Brendan Fraser. It's like, yeah, he's got a clock head, got a clock face. But I'm glad that they did it, and I really enjoyed it. What about you?
I'd give this an 8 as well. I think we could have done more with Dr. Tyme. Like, I know we've talked a little bit about Gravity Falls, and there's an episode where they get teleported to the future, and there's these like time games, and you see all these like cool time related challenges, and and then they don't do any of it. Like when they actually do the challenge, it's just normal like Tron stuff, and it's like, it feels like a missed opportunity. Similar with Dr. Tyme, like you've got a guy that can your team is facing this guy that can travel through time, and instead of like, remember in season 1 where they went to that guy's lab and there was a whole puppet show and all that stuff, this is just like disco, and it's like I feel like it felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity. I would have liked more of that, so I give it an 8, but I did like it.
There you go. Well, let's move into our final episode today. We're talking about Pain Patrol, Season 2, Episode 3. In the wake of a terrifying omen, Niles and Rita enter an interdimensional palace of the infamous internet. I'm saying a lot of it in words. Red Jack, who feeds on pain and has taken Larry prisoner. Jane is called to the underground to receive an ultimatum while her physical body travels to Florida with Cliff, who's eager to prove that he's a good father. Back at the manor, Dorothy's games of hide and seek end badly. I didn't want to mention this too quick because I was about to mention that Danny got dropped. And it got broken.
Yes.
And I really hope we figure out how to fix that, because I don't know how Danny's biology works, but hopefully we fix it.
Yeah, hopefully it's okay. We talked a little bit about this in our spoiler-free review, where it's like a lot of emotional investment in that brick, because like I didn't really feel the stakes in a lot of these episodes, but when that brick broke, I was like, oh damn.
I gasped.
Oh no, same. I did as well. By the way, Red Jack is played by Roger Floyd, the main antagonist of this episode, and Red Jack is a part of Grant Morrison's run, and a lot of this is
he looks cool.
His design in the comics is a little bit more abstract, a little less sci-fi villain. But the butterflies and the victims and the implication, it is implied in the comic, I believe, that he's Jack the Ripper. In this, they straight up like he is. That's how Niles meets him, which I thought was an effective opening.
I agree, and that was crazy when he pulls the scissors out and butterflies fly out. I'm like, I'm grossed out. I did like them leading you towards the butterflies as like a malicious entity, because it feels sweet for a little bit in the first episode. It's like in the second episode, but then you're like, nah, it's a pain demon coming to feast on your pain. Yeah. And
classic
Larry
pain demon
is left to what does he do? They take his bandages off, and this is a good flashback episode for how Larry got to the manor. But we do see that he what's his name? Red Jack undoes his bandages and makes people feel his radiation, and that's a pretty awful thing to do.
Yes.
It's a pretty mean thing to do.
And
we also
Red Jack's a real jerk.
And I did like seeing how Larry and Rita met. They get to see their abilities for the first time, and they get to feel like they're not alone. You see his room again, and I forgot how sad Larry's room is. It's really sad, but he's got a lot of radiation, but he did give him windows.
Yes. And
trying his best.
And I do like this emphasis on again, going back and emphasizing the interpersonal relationships on the team. I think is one of the aspects I like most about the show, and Rita and Larry have been there the longest. And it's an interesting dynamic too, because I think if Larry were straight, this would 100% be leading towards a romantic situation. And so I'm glad that with what they've decided, the direction they've decided to take Larry, that it kind of avoids all of that, and it's just a really meaningful personal relationship between the two, and it's very sweet, and I think it's very effectively depicted here.
I agree, and both the way Rita saves him, and like it's pretty rough seeing what happens to her being exposed to all that radiation, but it was a good moment for Rita in this episode, and I like seeing how they grew and got to know each other, because in the first episode of the entire show, we see Cliff's story of how he's basically locked up in that body for decades. Until he learns, when he finally chooses to walk or learns how to walk. It's bad news bears, but I like seeing Niles' kind of first run-ins with the supernatural as a kid. I like that idea that got him interested in exploring this kind of stuff and joining that society for like continuity. I forgot what this. Apologies, I forgot the name of it.
The normalcy. Anyway,
Department of Normalcy.
Department of Normalcy. Yeah.
I'll look it up while you do your part of the review. But I did like seeing that he was exposed to some of that early on, so that's why he started this career. He does know about Red Jack, but he doesn't really know what he's capable of. And boy, how did he seeing butterfly wings spring out of someone's back is frightening. Yeah. And I like seeing Niles like almost take up Jack on his offer to like, if you stay here, you won't age.
Yeah.
And we can figure it out. We'll just have to torture the people you love forever. And at least Niles had one tiny moment of humanity. Yeah. A little one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of wish we'd spent more time with Red Jack. He feels like a big enough enemy that we could have built him up more. And it's interesting watching the show, especially now that I'm reading the Doom Patrol comic, because interestingly, my favorite, I've said it before, my favorite part was the 2-parter last season with the Uncreator. And I actually think those 2 episodes, I enjoy them more than the actual comic that they adapted. Whereas the Red Jack stuff, I feel like he's a very distinct, interesting villain in the comic, kind of beyond normal, like good and evil. Like he's obviously evil. He feeds off people's pain, but he's not aware of that. Like he's almost like a Claw in Black Panther. Like he's just loving life. Like he's just being his best self. You know what I mean? Whereas this one seems like you're kind of typical, like snarling, drooling, I'm a bad guy. And it feels like a little less interesting. On the flip side, you've got Robotman and Jane traveling to see his daughter. And while I liked this scene and I liked kind of Robotman trying to unpack the way Chief has treated his daughter with the way he's treated his daughter, I kind of felt like we'd resolved all the daughter stuff in the previous season. And this kind of lent...
Really?
Yeah, it kind of felt like you came to a conclusion. You're not going to talk to her. You're going to let her live your life. You're going to do your thing. And it feels like this season kind of is repeating itself from the previous season. And so I'm kind of looking forward to them, taking what they've established and moving forward. I did like Jane... the kind of mutiny that's going on within her, and I don't know why. Nothing the show has shown me shows why Jane cares to be the main one, but it's interesting seeing her to try and figure out how she can maintain being the primary. I think is the language they use, the primary.
It felt like I don't know why she is either, but she does have that anger to her. Outside of Hammerhead, it's at least can be a little bit more even keel. But man, they all want to be out.
Yeah,
they all want to be on the surface.
I think it's worth noting. I don't know if you noticed that you felt the same way, but I think they've really kind of nailed down her character transition. Specifically, I think there's a scene in episode 1 where she goes to like 2 or 3. And I know we talked about in the previous one where it's like it's kind of hard to tell the difference between Jane and Hammerhead. They've done a better job of like visually letting the audience know like, hey, this is what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. And we get to learn more about the first primary that wasn't Kay. I think it's Melissa.
Yes, who we know from season 1 things did not end up great for her.
But I did like seeing her, and you get to see that personality where she's like, she will lie and also like stab you in the back, kind of like where she's like, she will protect Kay at every cost. And I like that idea, and I want to learn more about her. And maybe she comes back, like maybe that's a character from the comics that I'm not familiar with, but like I like that idea. By the way, it was the Bureau of Oddities when he joined, and then it became the Bureau of Normalcy.
Gotcha.
That's how it worked. Because they were looking for weird stuff, and then they tried to hide the weird stuff.
Makes sense.
Classic. Always a turncoat. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, and but I do like Cliff's story with his daughter because it was just they left the watch last time, mm-hmm. and he kind of like they left the door open. I felt like, and I wouldn't mind him just getting some closure and just trying to talk to her. Like I don't know what the relationship can be, but I would like to maybe see something come of it. Yeah. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what that.
We'll have to see. Although again, this deals with the same thing that Larry dealt with, where like your father that you thought was long gone shows up almost unrecognizable, but is clearly the same person. And I got to be honest, I'm with his daughter, like, hey, I don't want to do this right now. Can you go?
Mm-hmm. This is that sucks too, because it's a lot, and like she's right, but also Cliff had a temper tantrum after that break in his breaking his bus. I did like the joke where it's like it's his bus.
Yeah. I don't know about you and whatever. I feel like I would have reacted to the cops showing up differently 2 to 3 months if I watched this 2 to 3 months ago.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's weird watching that stuff now where it's like feelings are different.
Yeah, agreed. I agree, and because it was weird, they were trying to be funny. Also, I mentioned this on our podcast, which comes out every Monday. That I was watching New Girl, and there's a plot point where one of the characters becomes a cop, and like it's a big story, and it's funny. And sometimes you meet like dumb cops. You're like, this cop has night blindness, and you're like, that's funny because he can't see stuff at night. And I'm like, nah, like it's rough because it's like you guys are really funny with what you're doing here, but it's different now.
We know more now. we know more now. But yeah, so I think this episode ends with kind of Rita and Larry kind of reaffirming their affection for each other, and Niles is still no closer to solving his immortality issue, and now he's got to figure out how to fix Danny the Brick.
We'll have to see. But and Cyborg also learns about
Cyborg
Ronnie.
Yeah, Cyborg gets laid. We almost forgot.
Does, and good for them. Good for both of them. And he said he has done something. I'm like, man, it's okay. You have a robot body. Yeah. You can be honest.
Well, I think
I don't know.
think his clarification was he'd done something before the robot body, but not since.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But either way, hey,
you have a robot body. Ain't nobody judging you.
Nah, you can fly. Not you.
Yeah.
I guess different cyborgs can fly, but you got guns and stuff.
And speaking of, the feelings, interacting with scenes changing. There's a conversation between, Ronnie gets mugged. I don't remember if that was this episode or episode 2.
It was this. Episode.
Ronnie gets mugged, and Vic's like, "Well, I'm calling the cops right now," and she's like, "Don't do that." And the show portrays it as a very like kind of even keeled, but again, with the way things are, I'm like, Ronnie's right.
Ronnie's right.
Ronnie's the right one here.
And she's a vet, so there's like that aspect to it too. And he wants to be Boy Wonder. He wants to be on the Justice League.
Do you think so? In the comics, Ron Evers becomes an antagonist to Cyborg, but I don't get the impression that the show is building towards that. In this case, what do you think?
You know what? While there was a female Cyborg they introduced in Rebirth, and I did want to try to see if I could find what. They called her Variant.
Oh, cool.
That not as great as clever as a name. I wanted to see what her name was and pull that up really quick. Maybe that's interesting to like maybe have it's always fun when you get like the evil version of a character. Look at any first Marvel movie.
Yes,
got to have the evil version of them.
Classic.
We're not so different, you and me.
Yep, that's the line. That's the line. I can't remember. Did they introduce? Did they just hint at Grid, or did they actually mention Grid by name in season 1?
I think because he was the AI in the thing.
Yeah.
He's the AI in his system. They call it Grid.
Okay, because
they could bring up Grid.
I'd be interested to see that. I am interested to unpack Cyborg's issues, and I'm kind of hoping that, again, we kind of reunite the team. And I hope they kind of introduce an overarching antagonist. And as great as this show is, I miss Mr. Nobody. I want Mr. Nobody back. I think it's like we need to, even if he's like sort of part of the team and like way powered down or something. I feel like the show's missing a little bit of that overarching, and because as scary as the Candlemaker is, and we see him briefly, he's just scary. Mr. Nobody added this kind of like anarchic, unpredictable nature to it that I miss, and I hope Alan Tudyk shows back up on the show.
By the way, it was Scarlett Taylor who was Variant, the female cyborg, which is a bummer. She looks really cool, and I thought there'd be a connecting tissue there. Maybe Ronnie becomes that. I did want to bring up the Candlemaker, correct?
Yes.
Because one, that'd be a cool thumbnail, but also I think it's just something about that visualization when you first see it. I felt truly terrified, and I know you mentioned off camera like what the significance of that character was to Grant Morrison, but I hope we get to see him more, and I'll get to explore more imaginary friends that Dorothy Spinner has, because that idea of imaginary friends that come to life, whatever they are, either they're creations in her imagination or they are manifestations of different things she's feeling. I very excited to see more of that.
Yeah, agreed.
What would you give this episode?
I like this episode, I think, the most out of the 3, so I'd give it an 8.5.
I give it a 9 again. I mean, 9's all the way across for me. Really happy that the show is back. I'm excited to review more, and I'm bummed that there's only 9 episodes this season.
Yes.
So we've got a short amount of, like, it was 15 last season.
Yeah, it was a lot, and I kind of wonder if maybe that ate into the order from this season, but whatever. Right? That's not for me to figure out. So for those wondering, you're excited about the show, you can watch it on DC Universe and HBO Max. The first 3 episodes are dropping today as of this review. And then our understanding is that each week after that is another new episode. So 6, I think it's 6 more episodes. So yeah, it is a shorter order. And yeah, hopefully we get more of it after this as well.
I kind of hope we get more, just like, I don't know. It's just weird that they dumped 3 episodes at once.
Yeah.
I kind of get it, but also it's like, if for such a shorter order, like you thought you'd get more.
Yeah,
but
and also real quick before we move on, as far as the Chief trying to redeem himself, there is hints that he's making a new body for Robotman. And I'm interested to see. I know in Grant Morrison's run, Robotman gets an upgraded body thanks to the guy. I'm blanking on his name. The guy that made the Metal Men. Will Magnus?
Doc Magnus.
Yeah.
Will Magnus.
But that's that version of it in the comics is very like, it's black and sleek and very like 90s cool kind of a thing. So I'll be interested to see what the show, and he doesn't have it for very long. So I'll be interested to see what the show does with an updated, maybe they've got a little bit of that HBO Max money and it's like time to update Robotman's design.
The Metal Men would be a fun, weird group of characters to bring in to the Doom Patrol. But gang, let us know what you thought of these first 3 episodes. What do you think about the Candlemaker? About what could be happening, what Chief's willing to do to elongate his life so that he can be with his daughter, and what's going to happen to Danny. I want Danny World. It'd be cool if they did like the Gerard Way, like ambulance, and there's an entire land in there. I would be a big fan of that, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Join us on Patreon. You can watch us record our podcast. You can do Google Hangouts, a bunch of other fun stuff. Don't miss out. We would love for you to join us in our Discord, but also follow us on Twitter at Only Stupid Answers.
You got the bells from Stupid.
And please like, subscribe, share this video, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.